So this woman is the wife of a giant, and she sees him and says, oh, and she has all this compassion for Jack and says, Jack, you gotta hide because my husband, he eats people. And so she hides Jack in the best place that she possibly can. And just at the time when Jack is hiding from the giant, he starts to hear boom, 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 boom. And then he hears a giant's voice say, fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread. So Jack and the Beanstalk, guys, there's so much art around this. So this is a really cool story. So Jack and the Beanstalk is all about how to escape poverty into a life of abundance. Now, before we dive in, again, I want to emphasize there are 3 ways to tell a fairy tale. Should you tell a 3 or 4-year-old that the meaning of a fairy tale as their first experience? No, that's not a good idea, right? So there's three ways to do this, right? So with young children, what you want to do is quickly tell the story like an adventure and just ask them what they like about it. And so part of what you want to do when you're telling young children fairy tales is you just kind of quickly tell them the story. Da-da-da, this happened, and then you move on. And if there's something about it they liked, and kids have a tendency to do something, if you're like reading like storybooks to your kids, especially when they're really young, they'll start to say things like, I want that one again. I want that one again. Tell me that one again. What's happening is they are sensing something. There's a meaning or symbolic meaning inside that story that is resonating with them. So anytime your child wants you to retell them a story, what should you do? Yeah, retell the story. We tend to consume stories like adults, like, we're just moving on to the next movie. And I'm constantly trying to tell people, do not consume movies that way. Like, don't just go on and on. Find your deep symbolic stories and go deeper and deeper and deeper into them. So when you're watching a movie or reading a book, it's really, I think, it's sort of, it's trying to become one of your favorite stories or not. And it's sort of like auditioning. Would you like me to be one of your important stories in your life? And if it fails, like if the Jack and the Beanstalk movie doesn't quite fit, then you don't ever have to watch it again. But if you watch a movie that you're like, oh, wow, that's really powerful, then you want that, there's something deep in there. You want to be really aware of what that is. So that's how you tell a fairy tale to young children. And when you're telling them, what's important to remember, and this is what I'm going to help you guys try to do with Jack and the Beanstalk, there are 10 beats to this story. So a story has beats, which are basically like sections of the story, right? So we have chapters in longer books, but fairy tales it's better to think about these as beats. Like these are it happens so fast, it's almost like music. 1, 2, 3. And Jack and the Beanstalk has 10 beats, and each beat is really interesting. And part of what you want to be listening for is a kid who's like obsessed with one of the beats. Like some of the kids are going to be really interested in the giant. Oh my gosh, that scared me, like what the giant said. Or some are going to be really fascinated by the old man, or some are going to be fascinated, right, by the chicken that lays the golden eggs, things like that. So whatever they're interested in, you want to like zero in on and retell the story. Then I think that part of what you want to do with children as you're getting a little bit older is point out a beat in the story that unveils a truth about a situation that they're actually facing in reality. So sometimes if you have at hand 10 or 20 fairy tales that you really understand, you've told your kids, then they face a situation, whether it's like with a bully or like something going on in their life, you can make a parallel. Hey, you remember this story? Remember this one beat in the story, this one part where this happened? That's kind of like what you're going through. And then you can actually make reference to the story. You don't have to unpack the full meaning, but the beats are really there as a parent or as a friend for you or a sibling to help your friend to understand the nature of this. And then when you get older, I think it's great to do what we're about to do, and that is like just to pull all the way back and say, what is this whole thing about, right? So young kids usually won't appreciate this part as much, obviously, and so you don't want to ruin the story by beating them over the head with the bigger meaning. But wow, I'm going to ask you guys as we're going through this, as we look at the meaning, one of the things you're going to be tempted to do is possibly reduce its magic. And so I'm going to ask you guys, it's really important for you to be like absorbed in the magic of the story, even while we talk through the meaning. So we're going to try to separate these into two sections. So I'm going to quickly go through the beats of the story. Jack and the Beanstalk is a story about a fatherless family and a boy named Jack. When they run out of milk, there's a mysterious stranger who has magic beans. The mother reacts and throws the beans out the window. The magic beanstalk goes to the clouds. There's a helpful giant's wife in a castle in the clouds. The giant wants to eat Jack, but he steals a bag of coins. He then goes back up the beanstalk, steals a chicken that lays golden eggs. Then he goes back up the beanstalk a third time and steals a golden harp that plays music by itself. Then he chops down the beanstalk and destroys the giant. And that is the story. Now, as I tell the story, part of what you want to do, and I'm going to retell it now with some art and just like get into like the magic of the story. What you want to do is look for what glitters to you about the story. Is there a beat in the story that you're like, ooh, wow, that's really interesting. So what details? So I'm going to ask you guys to point out one detail from the story that just stands out to you guys the most. And each time you listen to the story, there might be a different detail that might stand out to you. So we're going to make sure we try to do that. We've got lots of different kinds of artwork, and so that might help or whatever, certain images. So the story starts at once upon a time, there was a boy named Jack, and he lived in his cottage with his mom, and their father had died, and all they really owned was the father's old rusty axe and this cow named Milky White. And the cow was a nice, faithful cow that they would milk every day, but one day the milk dried up and the cow no longer produced any milk. And the mom started freaking out. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And so the mom tells Jack, you need to go and sell the cow so that we can survive. And so then Jack takes the cow and starts to go towards the village. As he approaches the village, he bumps into an old man. And so he goes and talks to the old man and says to the old man, hey, would you like to buy my cow? And the old man said, well, I don't have any money, but I'd be happy to buy your cow for these magic beans. And he's like, these are magic beans. And he doesn't really explain a lot about the beans. But as Jack is looking at the beans, he's like, whoa, I could get magic beans in exchange for my cow. And so he gets so excited and he decides to give the cow to the old man in exchange for the beans. Now, how do you think his mom feels about this exchange? So he gets home, tells his mom, Mom, guess what? I found this old man and I was able to I wasn't able to get money, I was able to get magic beans for Milky White the cow. And of course, the mother was enraged. Oh my gosh, I can't believe you would do this, Jack. And so she grabs the beans and just throws them out the window and sends Jack to bed without any supper. So poor Jack. Now, Jack goes to sleep that night and wakes up the next morning very hungry. And as he walks downstairs, he notices something out the window where his mother had thrown the magic beans. And what he notices is a massive beanstalk has grown overnight. And so Jack gets super interested. What is this beanstalk? What is it? Like, why is it there? What's at the top of it? And so it's the kind of beanstalk where it's got so many different rungs. And so he's able to climb and climb and climb and climb. And so he goes all the way up the beanstalk, all the way into the clouds. And he gets to the clouds and he can walk on the clouds and he sees in the distance in the clouds a castle. And so he approaches this castle in the clouds. And the first thing that Jack notices is he knocks on the door of the castle, and who opens the door but a giant woman. So this woman is the wife of a giant, and she sees him and says, oh, and she has all this compassion for Jack and says, Jack, you gotta hide because my husband, he eats people. And so she hides Jack in the best place that she possibly can. And just at the time when Jack is hiding from the giant, he starts to hear boom, 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 boom. And then he hears a giant's voice say, fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread. Oh, so this terrifies Jack. Well, what the giant's wife does is, oh, honey, I've made for you all kinds of food. You don't have to go looking. And so he can't find Jack, but he does eat his wife's food, and this makes him very sleepy. And so then the giant falls asleep, and then Jack crawls out of his hiding place, and he notices that there is a whole bag of gold coins next to the giant. So he grabs the gold coins and sneaks them out, goes all the way down the beanstalk and gets to his mom. And wow, wouldn't that be awesome? That'd be a good story, right? But that's not where the story ends, because guess what happens with a bag of gold coins? You spend them and, they're helpful for a while, but what happens when you run out? Well, eventually, Jack and his mother run out of gold coins, and here's the beanstalk. And so what does Jack decide to do but climb the beanstalk a second time? And so he goes all the way back up the beanstalk, and he gets back to the giant's castle. And he notices in the giant's castle, there's not only gold coins, but there's a chicken that lays golden eggs. And that's way better than gold coins. And so Jack, after the giant falls asleep, grabs the chicken, comes back down the beanstalk with the chicken that lays the golden eggs. And so now they have this constant flow of money coming into their family. And so they've really solved their problem of not having enough food to eat, not having enough money to spend. But Jack keeps looking at the beanstalk and he keeps wondering, well, if there's gold coins up there, and if that giant also had a chicken that lays golden eggs, what else might be up there? And so Jack's curiosity one day gets the better of him, and he climbs the beanstalk a third time. And the third time he climbs up, what does he see when he sneaks into the giant's castle but a harp that plays music all by itself? It's a golden harp, and he sees that harp, and he wants the harp. And so while the giant is asleep, he goes and steals the harp. Now the harp, all of a sudden, as he grabs it, starts to cry out because it makes its own music, and he puts it in the bag and rushes all the way down the beanstalk. And as he does that, the giant wakes up and realizes, this is the boy who stole my gold coins, stole my chicken, and now he's stealing my harp. Is this giant happy? He is really angry with Jack. And so he decides he's going to go down and take care of Jack. And so Jack gets to the very bottom of the beanstalk, and what he does is he grabs his father's rusty old axe, chops at the beanstalk, and while the giant is really high in the sky trying to come down the beanstalk to get a hold of Jack, he successfully chops down the beanstalk, and the giant falls, and boom. And now Jack and his mother are safe. They have their chicken, and now they have this beautiful golden harp that brings so much joy and so much music into their family. The end. So these are the beats of the story. So when you think about retelling the story to your kids or like to a friend, part of what you're trying to do is just kind of get, again, it's hard to memorize all these things. So you want to do this very visually in your mind. You just sort of see these pictures and you just tell them in sequence, right? And the story is best told if you can just remember all 10 beats. But if you forget a beat or something, it's not the end of the world. But as you get better and better at telling Jack and the Beanstalk to somebody, and this is why I want to give you guys practice, you start to get better at remembering all these 10 beats. And I think they're really important parts of the story. Okay, we're gonna dive into the meaning of these 10 beats. So I think that this is the greatest business book in the history of the world. I think that this simple story, you can go and you can read the most amazing books out there about how to become a millionaire or whatever. There's so many today. I don't think any of them are as sophisticated as this story. Like, this story unveils so many of the steps. And as we're going to find, this entire story is also in the Bible. So we're going to talk about where it is in the Bible, but there's something, and I didn't even realize it was in the Bible. I was using the biblical story of Jack to explain to people how to come out of poverty, and then I would use Jack and the Beanstalk, and I didn't realize they were the same story. So I'm excited to unpack that with you guys as well. Okay, so we're gonna go over the 10 beats and the meaning of the 10 beats and what they all represent. So the first beat is that you see the root cause of poverty is fatherlessness. So when you think about poverty, this is the word that means somebody's really poor. They're struggling to have enough money. The actual root of this in history and in most people's lives is the lack of a father. If this story had a father in it, it would go like this. Jack grew up in a house with a father who had a trade. And as Jack was getting older, his dad taught Jack how to make money. And he was able to provide for his family. The end. It's a really good story, right? So the problem is that there's a lot of people who don't have a father. And even those who do have a father, sometimes, especially today, a lot of fathers don't know how to teach their kids how to come out of poverty. And so their kids are all starting over every generation. And so this is a problem that many people face. And so when I talk to a lot of men, they're all sort of Jacks who are trying to figure out, what do I do? Like nobody's telling me how to get out of poverty. And so the other thing that this is pointing out is that oftentimes, and the mother in this story is really interesting. She's just trying to keep the family together, right? She's thinking about, it's the job of the mother to think about, okay, what are we doing today? The job of the father is to think about the far off future. How are we gonna survive 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And so the idea that the cow ran out of milk, this is something that happens in fatherless families. Why? It's not the mom's fault. The mom is just trying to get up every day and provide for her family. Her job isn't to think about 5, 10 years into the future, but she doesn't have a husband. Her husband died. And so now the mother is sort of stuck with a immature son, and he's the only thing standing between her and poverty and their whole family. And so this cow, which happens, of course, they run out of milk, and now it's time for them to face total ruin. They are facing real starvation. Because even if Jack goes and sells the cow for lots of money, does that solve their problem? No, it just kicks the can down the road. Their problem might be solved for a month, but guess what happens when they run out of money that they sold their cow for? The cow was providing milk every single day, and this allowed them to live. But once you sell the cow, how do you survive? So the mother's strategy is also not great. And guess who knows that that's not a great strategy? The wise old man. Because if you don't have a father, guess what you need? You need a wise old man to come and tell you how the world really works. Now, one of the things that these wise old men, when you're dealing with a fatherless boy, you kind of have to be hard on them because they're in a very, very tough spot. And you're not going to be able to become their father. So part of what you have to do is teach them the ways of the world properly. And so this guy could have said, oh, I don't want your cow, just take these magic beans. That would have been really nice, right? But it may not be the best thing to do. He actually negotiates with Jack and forces Jack to make a really tough decision, to grow up and decide for his family which he's going to, what is he going to do? Is he going to exchange the one thing they have left for these magic beans, or is he going to just sell the cow the way his mother wanted for money? And Jack sees something that his father would have seen, something that I think men are designed to see, and that is, I cannot sell this cow just to get something for the next month, and then we slowly starve to death. I need something that will help provide for us and get us out of this situation forever. So he's looking for something, and men must look for this. And what is really interesting about a bean is we use the word beans. Oftentimes when we use the word beans, we're talking about, the food that we're eating, but there's another word for beans. Like when you actually open up a pea pod or a bean pod and you take out those individual beans, what are those? Those are seeds. And that is what you need if you're in poverty. You need seeds. Why? Seeds have the ability to produce more seeds, right? Seeds have the ability to multiply. And so if you're stuck in poverty, you desperately need seeds. In fact, when people are trying to start a brand new business that will somehow make enough money for their family, and they realize they don't have enough money, they go asking their friends for money. And you know what they call the money that they get from friends? Yeah, it's called seed funding. Yeah, seed funding. So this is what Jack needs. He needs to somehow get out of poverty, and the old man knows what he needs, and Jack just sort of symbolically gets it. But guess who doesn't get it? And this is tough, okay? Why doesn't she get it?
Right away.
Yeah, she's concerned about today. She's like, I've done everything I can. I clean the house every day. I cook dinner every day. I'm focused on our daily existence, and you have just destroyed what I see. Her world is very short-sighted in order for her to be hyper-focused on what she needs to focus on, which is the affairs of the home. But this is a problem because if a father were there, he might see what Jack is doing or what Jack was listening to. But the symbolic mother, again, these are symbolic ideas. There are some mothers who are extremely visionary, some fathers who are very short-sighted, okay? But in the symbolic world, the way that mothers think, they think very much like, I need to provide for my family today. And the way that fathers think is, I need to provide for the future, right? So part of the problem is Jack is stuck in this very difficult situation. He only has a mother, and the mother doesn't get it. Why would we want these seeds? This is totally useless. You've left us to starve, and out the window go. Now, a window is always sort of a symbol of transition, right? And so she throws out the seeds as if they're completely useless, right? And so then Jack goes to bed. Now, part of why I put the network of poverty is that when I've talked to people about people that have stayed in poverty, one of the things that they constantly refer to is when one person in a network of poverty, let's say everyone's really poor, when one person begins to become successful, they immediately get kind of dragged down by everyone else in their life is so desperate and is so difficult and everyone's thinking so short-sighted, they drag down the one person who's starting to actually become a little bit successful. And so people exist in these very difficult networks of poverty, and Jack is in one. He's got one person to help him out, and it's his mom who doesn't understand how to come out of this. And if he just listens to his mother, they will never get out of this. And this is so true of a lot of people who are stuck in these networks of poverty. They cannot ever escape. So somehow they need to find a way out. They need a ladder. They need to somehow get into a completely different realm. And it's a very difficult thing for people that are trapped in these networks of poverty to do. And he's definitely trapped in one of these. Okay, the next beat is all of a sudden something emerges that allows him to come all the way out of poverty, and that is this ladder, this beanstalk, right? That allows him to transcend where he's at now to another realm. And what's so cool about stories is, of course, this doesn't actually happen. You don't actually get a beanstalk when you throw out magic beans. But this symbolically happens, is that what you're looking for is you got wisdom from the old man, you got seeds, so now you can actually find a way out, and now all of a sudden you have a pathway. You need a pathway out of poverty, and this beanstalk represents the pathway out of poverty. So you begin to climb the pathway, and the first thing you encounter when you try to climb the pathway, and you're really hoping to encounter this, you guys, is a kind woman, someone who has compassion for you. Now, this can be a man, doesn't have to be a woman, but oftentimes what happens when you're trying to come out is that you are in a very dangerous place. You don't know what's going on. You need a lot of help. You need somebody to hide you from the bad guy, somebody who gives you a little bit of a map of this is a castle, cause you to come all the way out. You have to do this yourself, but they can give you like the clues you need, right? That the help at the last minute. And that's what happens. Now, the problem, of course, in this new realm where you're trying to escape from poverty is you are encountering something that the story is calling a giant, right? In other words, there's somebody guarding all the goods, and they're not going to give it up willingly. And this is true anytime you try to come out of poverty. You're not simply going to find the resources and just they're going to be handed to you. You're going to have to take them from somebody. Why is that? Because we live in an economic system that is essentially competitive. You cannot make money out of thin air. You can create new value, but it's always going to be guarded by someone. Someone is going to try to resist you. There's somebody who's going to see that what you're doing is going to come at least in part at their expense, right? And so it's a very difficult thing to deal with. And these giants are very selfish in the stories, right? They don't care about you. They don't care about your starving family. They care about what they have, and they're going to fight you for it. And if they can get a hold of you, they're going to consume you. It's not good enough that they have gold and the chicken that lays the golden eggs. They want your bones. In other words, they want your life. They want to somehow get a hold of you as well. Okay, so you're in a very dangerous situation. And the only way you're going to somehow get out of this is you've got to take this sort of first thing from the giant. Now, the problem is the first thing you take from the giant, this bag of gold coins, is actually a false answer to the problem, right? Because it doesn't actually create more gold coins. It just is a finite resource that you're going to spend, and you're going to be right back where you started. Even if he went and sold the cow, he would have ended up with some money, but they would have run out of money. Even if he has a bag of gold coins, he's going to run out of gold coins, and then he's going to end up where he started, needing something. And I think this is ultimately the absolute brilliance of this story, is pointing out this tension, because I would say that 95% of men that I know do not understand the difference between a bag of gold coins and a chicken that lays golden eggs. And we absolutely need to understand the difference. These are such different resources. What's the difference between a bag of gold coins and a chicken that lays golden eggs? Which is better? And we call that an income producing asset, right? That's our complicated way of talking about a chicken that lays golden eggs. Something that's constant. And this is what's so brilliant about this story is today when we have these conversations, we use abstract words like that, assets that create, repeated income or residual income or whatever we want to, but all we're talking about in the symbolic world is a chicken that lays golden eggs, right? That's it. Every single father needs to look for a chicken that lays golden eggs. Like, that's your job. Like, if you don't find that chicken, you're going to be in poverty. Like, that's what's coming for you eventually if you just go after gold coins. And most men never understand this, and because they've never heard Jack and the Beanstalk. But you guys will solve that problem. You'll explain it, and you'll explain to them there's a false answer and a true answer, and you need to go after the chicken that lays the golden eggs. Now, this is also coming from the giant. Somebody is out there who's already has control of this asset, and so Jack takes it from him. Now, there's a third, and this is, I think, like, every step of this story gets more brilliant to me, and this step really blows my mind. So I can't believe that they realize the difference between gold coins and a chicken that lays golden eggs. That is such a powerful move. But you would think, again, that's probably a good ending of the story. Like, wow, we did it. You have your assets, happily ever after. But the story doesn't stop there. The story goes even deeper and says there's actually a bigger problem that you have. And this is a really complicated one, and this is one I'm still pondering. Like, what exactly does the golden harp represent? Because it's this idea that it pushes you past the problem of poverty into a different, almost like a different realm of problem. That this golden harp that makes music by itself is bringing into the family of Jack. It's not good enough for your house to be filled with stuff, right? It needs to be filled with music. It needs to be filled with joy. But most people today that have come to the conclusion that they need an income-producing asset think that that's good enough. And the story of Jack and the Beanstalk says it's not. Like, that asset is not going to solve your biggest, you're going to run into another problem, which is you're not going to fill your house with beauty and joy just with stuff. I think there is a moment to go after the golden harp, but if you're having children, you have to provide for a family, you need to go after the chicken first. Like, please do not go after the harp first. And this is a trap. So all of these things, Jack and the Beanstalk is basically unveiling all of the traps, the trap of the gold coins, the trap, I mean, every one of these, all 10 beats is really describing another trap. And wow, this one is so sophisticated. The trap of, oh, I just need assets and I'll be happy. No, but you do need those before. There's a sequence to getting out of this situation, and follow Jack's sequence. And so this is the final beat of the story, is that if you go through this sequence, yes, you'll have to sneak, yes, you'll have to take, yes, there'll be these really uncomfortable situations, but if you get more and more successful, eventually the giant is going to say, you are my problem and I'm coming for you, and you will be attacked by the giant. So you have to do something. There's a final step in providing for your family as a man, and that is you have to sever the relationship that your family has with the giant. You have to destroy the beanstalk in order to save your family. And so Jack has to take the resources of his father, cut down the beanstalk, and stop this giant from coming and killing him and his mom, right? So that's the final step. And this happens. Imagine what happens within, and again, I think one way to, the realm I think about this most often is in the business realm. Anybody who's really gotten more and more and more successful, they will have battle scars of people that have come after them for the things that they've taken or the things that they've done or things that they've like, oh, I think this might belong to me. I've seen so many of those conversations. Sometimes they're just, sometimes they're unjust, but whatever happens, there's going to be a fight at the end of this, and it's going to be really difficult to do this. And the people that ultimately get out are the people that sever that relationship successfully, and that can be very difficult to do. The giant does not like you taking all of this stuff. And again, part of what's interesting about this story is that it doesn't really cause us to resolve the justice question, which when I talk to a lot of young men who are trying to build businesses, this is a collision that they come up with. Like, you end up involved in things that are really gray and difficult to discern. Oh, did I take that from that person, or does that belong to me? Like, this is a very difficult thing to untangle, and the story does not answer that question. The story says that you're going to deal with that, and that's going to be really difficult. So, but these are the things you're going to have to do, one way or the other. I hope you do it ethically. I hope you do it with integrity. But man, all these steps you're going to have to take if you're going to get out of this impoverished situation that you're in with your family. Okay, so that's Jack and the Beanstalk. I want to point out one last thing, and this is the connection of Jack and the Beanstalk to the Bible. So the story of Jack and the Beanstalk is virtually identical to the story of Jacob's ladder. So we have in the story of Jacob, and it's really interesting. This is William Blake's painting of Jacob's ladder. And you can see even one of the things that William Blake did, and this is the most famous painting of Jacob's ladder that exists, and he made it a spiral. So it even looks like a beanstalk in this painting, right? And you see the same similar spirals that people put. And so there's a ladder to heaven that exists that allows you to get up there. Now, where are the beats? So let me just quickly go through these and let you guys talk. So Jacob loses his father because he has to escape what happened to Esau. That's the first beat of the story. The second is God. He encounters God and the ladder to heaven. That is similar to what happened with Jack encountering the old wise man and getting the beanstalk. In a similar way, Jacob has now no resources and does not know how to get out of this. So what Jacob does is he makes a deal with God, very similar to the deal that Jack makes with the old man. Like, he gives the cow. Jacob literally says, I will give you a tenth of everything I have if you provide resources for me so that I can come back to the land of my father. That's what so Jacob makes a deal. The first person that Jacob runs into when he gets to Padan Aram, this new location, is a kind woman named Rachel, who actually brings her into his family. The problem is she's attached to somebody who's like a giant, who's got all the resources, named Laban, right? And so what he does is he makes a deal with Laban. And the first deal he makes is a deal to get wages. And this goes on for 14 years. And this is like getting the gold coins. He's able to survive, but doesn't actually provide for his family. And Jacob literally has this conversation with Laban in the book of Genesis where he says, when can I provide for my family? When can I get resources? But of course, Laban doesn't want to give him resources. So instead, he has to go into this very tricky situation where Jacob means trickster, right? So in the same way that Jack had to trick the giant, like, you have this whole crazy story of Jacob attempting to get resources from Laban in a way, and all of their just ambiguity we talked about exists in the story. Like, what is he doing? He's like trying to get these goats. Is he doing the right thing? He's praying, he's using these sticks. A very strange story. Eventually, though, he gets his wages transferred into assets. And this is him getting the chicken that lays the golden eggs. So eventually, when he gets his assets, he's able to get away from Laban. So he tries to run away from Laban, but he runs right into God, right? And then he wrestles with God to get an eternal blessing, right? And this is such a crazy story where he wrestles with the angel. And I think this is like similar to getting the golden harp. Of course, Laban does finally get after him. Laban tries to consume him, tries to pull him back, threatens to kill his family. And he's able to sever his relationship with Laban forever and escape from his clutches. And that has all the beats. There might be a slightly different order, slightly different themes. Very, very similar story.